Welcome back to Movie Mogul 101. I'm your host, Walt Whitmore, and thanks for joining me again. Episode one, which I did a couple days ago, it went over well. It took a moment, though. I mean, I had to get used to this editing software, and then I had to learn the camera that I bought and the mic that's in front of me, and I had a light that I got from my daughter because, again, she's a student filmmaker and whatnot. And I had to tweak all of that. So it took a moment. It took actually longer than I had expected, but we got it. We shot it and we posted it. And I appreciate you that tuned in. I really do. And I thank you for coming back today. I've entitled this episode 2, Why I Tell Stories. And now, my mom, if she was still alive, she would say, "Boy, you always lied. As a little boy, you told stories." Well, seriously, why I tell stories. You know, some movies, some stories, they stick with you. And there's one film in particular that really motivated me. That's my emphasis for telling stories. And as you can guess from episode 1, it's Cooley High. Cooley High came out in 1975. It was written by Eric Monty, and it was based on his life, and it was produced by Michael Schultz. Well, the year is 1976, right after Cooley High had debuted and after it made its $13 million at the box office off of a mere investment of some $750,000. Well, our high school, which was a predominantly African American high school, predominantly African American community. I lived in an enclave of Detroit, meaning that we were surrounded by Detroit. Okay. So I don't want to call it a suburb, but, we were within the city of Detroit. And our high school used to show African American films, in the evening. And, these were movies that really reflected our lives, movies like Cornbread Earl and Me, Sounder, and of course, Cooley High. And these movies, they really were mirrors to who we were as young African Americans coming up and the communities in which we lived, and that urban diaspora that we were engulfed in. So I mean, they were not just movies, they were really events in our life. Well, on one such evening, my best friend and I, Fred, were walking home in the middle of the night, from the movies. It was either Cooley High or Cornbread Earl and Me. And it may have actually been a double feature that night. It may have been a double feature. But at any rate, we're walking home from the movies, from the high school. It's dark. And we're about a block away from Fred's home. And then that's when this car pulls up. Boom. Doors pop open, and then two guys jump out. One guy has a gun in his hand and just turn around, turn around, turn around. Well, as Fred begins to turn, and as I turn, Fred breaks south, headed towards his home again. Fred was only about a mile away from his house. I'm about 4 blocks from, I'm a block away from his home. I'm 4 blocks from my home, right? I break north, bend the corner, hit the alley. I got a full block to sprint in the dark alley. I hit the main thoroughfare. Then I got another 2-3 blocks to go before I get home. And if I breathe twice, I breathe one more time than I thought I did. I mean, I was gone. So we escaped. We get home. We call one another, of course we're excited, heart is beating fast, I'm trying to explain it to my parents, what happened and all that kind of stuff. So the next day we go to school and it's funny now. So we're telling everybody about it. We're laughing, it's funny now, but at the moment, trust me, it was life or death. Well, little did I know, because of that incident that evening, that Cooley High would be with me for the rest of my life. It was no longer a movie. I mean, that movie, that incident, it changed my life. You know, I'm a writer. I write. I watch a lot of movies. I watch some from a technical standpoint in terms of dissecting it. And then there are other movies that I watch casually that I've seen multiple times, like Godfather and the Rocky series and all that type of thing. Well, Cooley High no longer falls into that category when we talk about casual viewing. Cooley High today, when I watch it, it's reserved for when I've experienced a loss. When one of my close homeboys that I came up with, when they've died. That final scene in Cooley High really says it all. When Preacher's standing over the grave of Cochise and he pours out libations, he pours wine from that Richard Wild Irish Rose bottle, and he begins to read a poem that he wrote for his best friend, but he stops midway. And then he begins to tell Cochise how great he could have been as a basketball player. And then in mid-sentence, he just stops. And Preach says, gotta go, gotta go. And he walks away. And that's the movie. I relived that scene. And I watched that movie, Cooley High, whenever one of my homeboys that pass away. Like when Daryl, Big Boulder, died. And his brother Reggie was murdered. Big Billy and Diallo, when they murdered him. Quincy B and Georgie. So stories are more than entertainment. They carry memories. They help us grieve. And for me, they help me honor my friends that have passed away. And that's what Cooley High means to me. That's why I tell stories. That's why this journey matters. Movie Mogul 101.